Hello everyone, my name is Thea Toft Amholdt. I'm a child psychologist and a PhD student here in Common Play Institute. And today I'm going to tell you about my PhD study named Motivating Playgrounds. The study was conducted in a cooperation between the University of Southern Denmark and Common Play Institute. And I would like to tell you about the background of the PhD study, about how we collected our data, and a bit about our findings. I would like to start out telling you about the background of the PhD study. I brought this graph with me today to show you how children's physical activity develops over the years. We can see that children become less and less physically active as they age, and especially during the tween period between 9 and 12 years, children's physical activity decline very rapidly. We know from the World Health Organization that they recommend play as number one way to activate children. But we don't know much about from research how the tweens are active on playgrounds. In this PhD study, we wanted to investigate what constitutes a motivating playground for tweens. So we investigated the where, the what, and the why. We looked at where on playgrounds tweens are most and least active. We wanted to know what they do when they use the playground, and then we asked the big why. So why do they behave as they do on playgrounds? So in this figure you can see how we divided and developed the study. We started out with study 1 and study 2, and then on the basis of these two studies we asked about the big why. So we started out collecting data for study 1, the where, and study 2, the what. And we went out to 4 different common playgrounds here in Denmark. We handed out activity tracking belts to all of the students that were between 9 and 12. So they wore this belt with an activity tracker and a GPS for one whole school week. Then during this week we came out and we conducted structured observations to see what they were doing when they were playing on the playground. After 1 week we came back and we collected the belts, and then we transferred all of the data. And we ended up with more than 2,000 million data points from the GPS and the activity tracker. When we analyzed the data, we took a map over the playground from the specific school, and we put the information from the GPSs so that we could see how the children were moving around on the playground. And then we put information from the activity tracker so that we could see the areas with very high physical activity and the areas with lower physical activity. One of the findings we had were about pieces of climbing equipment. If we isolated the data from the girls, we could see that all of the different climbing equipment pieces lighted up in the hotspot analysis. So we could see that the girls were really active in climbing structures like this one. They used it for climbing up high, for hanging out, and for climbing up in the top and talking together. So if we want to activate girls, we should install climbing equipment like this one. Another finding we had were about ball game areas and how the tweens use those. If we looked at high physical activity areas for one gender, we could see that it was often very close to a low physical activity area for the other gender. So it could be the girls being very physically active at a climbing structure and then having low physical activity areas for boys around it. And the other way around, it could be boys being very physically active at a ball game area like this one behind me. And then we had low physical activity for the girls around that one. So it could indicate that we have some performers and some spectators. When we looked at all of the hotspots for physical activity, we saw one very important pattern, and that was that all of the ball game areas lighted up for high physical activity. So as you can see here in the background, a lot of children like to use the ball game equipment for high physical activity. And this was not only the case for boys, it was also the case for girls. We think that ball games are only for boys, but we could actually also see that girls like to be physically active on ball game equipment like this one. And the third finding was about challenging play and a way to be social on playgrounds. Another very important consideration when we make playgrounds for tweens is to think not only about their physical activity, but also about their social activity. The tweens really like areas where they could be together with a lot of their friends. So like this one we have in the background, where there is enough space for them to have fun with each other, to hang out and to talk together, not only to be physically active, but to be together in a large group. In the second study, the what study, we took our observations and we calculated how much time tweens spent in different play categories. What we found was that tweens use 80% of their time on either physically active play or talkative play. Talkative play could be hanging out and talking with their friends. And if we compare these results to studies on younger children, we see that there is a very, very large difference. The younger children usually spend much of their time on either constructional play, which could be playing in sands or playing with sticks, or in symbolic play, like playing pirates. So the way the tweens use playgrounds is different from the way younger children use playgrounds. We then took the results from study 1 and 2 and we synthesized all of the conclusions to make our interview guide for study 3. In study 3, we investigated what constituted a motivating playground for tweens. So why do they use playgrounds as they do? In this study, we used a theoretical framework to understand their motivations. The theory is called the self-determination theory, and it states that in order for human beings to feel motivated, they should feel supported in 3 different needs. They should feel autonomy, that they could decide themselves what to do. They should feel supported in competence, that they feel competent what they are doing. It shouldn't be too boring, too easy, but not too difficult. And the third factor is that we should feel supported in our relatedness, which means to care for and being cared for by others. So in this study, I interviewed 10 groups of 5 to 6 tweens about their motivations for using the playground. We divided the interview in 2 different phases. One phase inside a classroom where I interviewed the tweens about their motivation. And then we went outside on the playground and I followed the tweens around so that they could show me all of their favorite places at the playground. We then analyzed our interview data based on the self-determination theory. The theory that stated that to feel motivated, we should be supported in our autonomy, competence, and relatedness. In this study, we concluded that in order for playgrounds to support the need for autonomy of tweens, playgrounds should make the tweens feel like they could decide themselves what to play. They should have enough play equipment available. Some of the tweens said that they didn't feel like any of the pieces of play equipment were made for them. So it's really important to have pieces of play equipment that they like to play with. To support competence, the playground should challenge the tweens, not make all of the play equipment that is too easy for them. The pieces of play equipment should be large enough for them to feel challenged. And they also said that they wanted to practice and get better when they use the playground. They also told us that all of the experiences on the playground, they took with them inside in the classroom, and it made a better classroom environment for them. So in this study, we concluded that if the playground could support the need for autonomy, competence, and relatedness of tweens, they would feel motivated to use the playground. In my PhD thesis, we set 3 recommendations of practical implications to all of the practitioners out there that would like to make playgrounds that are more motivating for tweens. We recommended that practitioners should plan for social areas designated tweens, areas where they can hang out together and be social and feel supported in their need for relatedness. Then we recommend that you should incorporate age-appropriate challenges out there that fits the physical size of tweens. Then thirdly, we recommend to make room for some of the activities that tweens like the most for physical activity. That could be ball game equipment or climbing equipment. Thank you so much for listening to all of my findings from my PhD study. If you would like to read more, we've written a white paper, an infographic, and you can also read the scientific papers.
Compan. Let's play!